Hey folks, welcome back to Sidetrack's Board Game Channel. Today I thought I'd share my progress on one of the games that I've been designing. Right now I'm calling the game Band Leader, although I'm not totally convinced that's the name I want to go with, but for lack of anything better, I didn't want to hold up progress just trying to come up with names, but I've got about 10 or 12 different names for it, but that's the one I'm going with so far. So one of the things about game design is it tends to be iterative, and you tend to gain inspiration from other games that you play and things that you like in those games. So a couple of the games that I really enjoy that I kind of drew some inspiration from for this design. One of the games is called Role Player, and this is a really cool game with sort of a Dungeons and Dragons theme to it, where you're trying to design a character, or you're creating a character in the game, just like you would do at the beginning of a role-playing game. And in this game, you roll a whole bunch of dice, and those dice become your character traits. And you're trying to, depending on the character that you're trying to create, you may need to be really high in strength or dexterity or different traits. And you're trying to, you draft the dice, which I really like, the dice drafting, and then you can manipulate those dice to change your character traits. And this is a really fun game. I really enjoy it. The one thing is it's kind of a half a step too complicated for some folks. And even though it seems pretty simple on the surface, it can get a little thinky, and it can kind of freeze people up a little bit. So I wanted to try to use the dice drafting in this game, that mechanism, and sort of adapt it and make it a little easier and a little more approachable. So in Band Leader, what we're doing is each color of dice represents a different type of instrument in the marching band that you're putting together for this parade. And the idea behind the game is you are a drum major, and your local community is holding a parade, and you're trying to put together the best band. And you're going to score points a few different ways. One is going to be based on the composition of your band. One is going to be based on the goals set by your band director, which you will have some individual objectives that are secret from everybody else. And that's sort of like your band director's marching orders. And if you can hit those objectives, you're going to score some points. You'll get points based on your musical performance in the parade. You'll get points based on your signature style. Each band has their own signature style that they can gain style points for. And then you'll also gain points based on where you line up in the parade. And you may want to be next to the giant balloons or some floats, or you get some bonus points if you're next to the grand marshal in the parade. And so that's the aspect that plays out on the board, is you're basically jockeying for position in the parade lineup. And so there's a few different ways to score points. And so the aspect of the game that takes itself from Role Player is that band composition. So instead of developing individual character traits, you're basically putting your band together with different types of instruments, and each pip on the dice represents a member of your band. So if you have a yellow 6, then you're adding 6 trumpet players to your band. And so the dice drafting part is very similar to Role Player, but the manipulation of the dice is much simpler, and I think easier to approach than Role Player. So that was one of the sources of inspiration. The other source of inspiration is the way you take actions, and basically the way the turns work in this game. And there's a couple of games that I took inspiration from there. One is Jamaica. And the thing that I really like about this game is everybody has the same deck of cards. Like, we are similar, I guess. They're different decks, but they have all the same actions in those decks. So throughout the game, you have the same choices as I have, but those decks are shuffled, so they're going to come up in different orders. But I really like that, in that we all have the same set of choices, essentially, but the timing of those choices is going to change throughout the game. And so it's sort of it's a balanced playing field, but there's also some randomization to it, and I really like that. The other game that does something similar is Sansushi, and this is the original printing. It just got reprinted by Ravensburger. And this is very similar. Everybody has a deck of cards, and they all have the same actions in those. And so throughout the game, you're all going to be having the same choices to pick from, but they're randomized. The thing I like about this game is when the deck runs out, the game runs out. And so everybody is going to take every one of those actions throughout the game. In Jamaica, there's a good chance you're going to reshuffle your deck. And so some of the actions that you take, you'll get to take twice, and other ones you won't. In this game, you're going to play every card. When the deck runs out, the game runs out. And so I really like that, and have sort of adopted that kind of a framework for Band Leader, in that each player has a deck of 20 cards. And on those cards, the one thing that Sansuchi does is each card has one action. And so you draft 2 cards and you decide which one you're going to play, and then you take that one action. So your choice is either you're going to do A or B. In Jamaica, it's similar. You draft 2 cards, and then there's a morning phase and a night phase, but essentially it's an A or B choice. So each turn you basically have 2 choices. What I'm going to do in Band Leader is each card that you draft has a left side and a right side, and so you're going to draft 2 cards, and essentially you have 4 choices then, because you're going to decide which card you want to play, and then you're going to decide, do you want to take the left action or the right action. And so again, everybody has the same 20 cards with the same combinations of actions, but they're going to be coming up in a randomized order. And one of the things that we found in play testing, and Grady kind of came up with this idea, he and I came up with it together after a play test. One of the things that I love, and sort of the twist, the thing that's different between Band Leader and these other games, is that when you pick your 2 cards and you decide which one you want to play, if you choose, typically in these other games, what you do is you take the one you're not playing and you put it right back on top of your deck. And so you know on your next turn, that's going to be one of your choices. What we decided to do with Band Leader, and I'm loving it the more we play test it, is you have the choice to put that back on top of your deck, or you can bury it at the bottom of your deck. So there's a little more strategy involved, because if it's an action that I think, oh man, I'd love to have that towards the end of the game, I can bury it at the bottom of my deck, knowing that it'll come up way later in the game. And the reason we did that is because we found that early in the game, and I'll show you here in a minute when we get to the table, early in the game, there are certain actions that you kind of, I don't want those actions yet, because there's not enough of the parade lineup, there's not enough of the board revealed to make those actions valuable yet. And so those are better later in the game. Well, what we realized was if you get a lot of those cards at the beginning, then you're kind of hosed, because you're getting a bunch of choices that really don't do you any good at the start of the game. And vice versa, there's some choices that are a little bit better at the beginning of the game that if they come up later in the game, they're not going to be worth as much to you. So what we decided was, well, instead of putting that back on top and knowing you're going to immediately have the same choice that you probably don't want, why not put it at the bottom? And so I really love that. And I don't think I've played any other games that have that twist to it. So it uses the mechanism that I really like, but adds a little twist to it. The one thing right now, obviously this is just a prototype, but the one thing that I wish I could develop some artwork. I'm not an artist, and a lot of times, you watch design reviews, it says, don't bother with the artwork, because if you decide to publish this game and you're working with a publisher, they're going to want to put their own artwork on it. But I think in this game, the artwork could really make or break it, like in terms of the table presence of the game, because it's an easy, approachable game to play. But I think the artwork And you think about going to a parade, right? The visual aspect of the parade is part of the deal. And I think there's a real great potential in this game that the artwork could really add a lot to it, because you're going to have floats and you're going to have other marching groups and the giant balloons. And I think there could be a real visual pop to the game, depending on the artwork. So I've tried to add a little bit here and there just to add a little flavor to it, with clip art and things like that. But it's been a struggle for me to sort of hold back on the reins there and not spend a lot of time messing with art, even though I think the art could be a big part of it. But a couple of the things, those mechanisms that I liked from these other games, I think is a big draw, and that the fact that they're not exactly the same, there's a little bit of a twist to them. I think the thing that I'm liking about this is that there's a good progression to the game, because as you'll see, more and more of the parade lineup gets revealed as the game goes on. So it sort of ramps up the tension a little bit in the game as it goes on. I think it's going to be easy to teach. It's going to be a very accessible game. And I love the theme, because like I've said in my previous video, I haven't seen any games. I found a couple on the Board Game Geek from years ago that had sort of a marching band theme and a parade theme to it, but they looked pretty fringe and didn't look like many people had played them. So I haven't seen a good game with this theme. So I'm pretty excited about it. So let's get to the table and I'll show you a little bit about Band Leader. Okay, so let me show you how Band Leader works. This is basically showing a 3-player setup for the game. Each player gets their own player board. Right now, we're using these big chunky square cubes to represent your drum major for each team. But a friend of mine is working on printing some 3D drum majors, so that in the future it'd be really cool if each person had their own drum major, and when you claim your band, you actually put your drum major. And ideally, if we could get them to stand up, it would just be a cool component, a cool thing to add to the board to give it a little bit of pop. But in this game, each player gets their own player board at the beginning of the game. We also take 4 dice for each player from this dice bag, and we add them to the band room. So in this case, we would have 12 dice since it's 3 players. And I built this dice tower just not really as a necessity, but because I thought it would be fun to build, and I thought it would be cool. And if I decide to go to some conventions to show this game and get some play testers, I thought it might attract some attention. So it's sort of an over-the-top, unnecessary item, but I still think it's cool. But you roll the dice into the band room. The band room is the bottom floor of the dice tower, and that's where you're going to recruit band members for your band. So each band has space for woodwinds. There's 2 rows for brass, and there's 1 row for percussion. And each color of the dice represents a different type of instrument. So in this case, if I were to get a black 5, the black dice are the woodwinds. That would add 5 woodwinds, clarinets, saxophones, whatever, to my band. If I were to add this blue 6 represents the tubas, I would add that to the brass section. And there are 3 different types of brass instruments. There's tubas, trombones, and trumpets that you can add to the brass. And then there's also a percussion section. So during the setup of the game, what you're going to do is you're going to take a number of these band unit cards, depending on the number of players. It's the number of players plus 1. So in this case, I would take 4 bands, and then I would also take a bunch of these random unit cards. And these are floats, walking groups, other units that are going to be in the parade. And I would shuffle them together to make the parade deck, which I've already done. These are all the extra cards that won't be used this round, or this game, so it's randomized. And then I put them out on the board just randomly to make the parade lineup. And throughout the game, these are slowly going to be revealed. So to start the game, we take the one that's directly behind the color guard, and it happens to be a dance troupe. And that's how the board will look to start the game. In each game, there are 2 objectives that will always remain the same. Whoever has the biggest band is going to score some points, and whoever has the best musical performance is going to score some points. And that doesn't change. The only thing that changes on these is depending on the number of players that you have, the number of points you gain is a little bit different. But those objectives will always be the same. There's also a judge's stand. And the thing about the judges stand is there are 3 judges in the parade, but you don't necessarily know what they're looking for. And so those are sort of hidden objectives. But during the game, you will have the option, one of the actions you can take is to peek at the judge's stand and get some insight into what each judge is looking for. So just as an example, if I was to peek at this card, and I wouldn't tell anybody else, but it tells me that this particular judge is going to be giving out an award for whoever has the most percussion in their band. And so if I learn that information, it might help me make decisions about what to add to my band as the game goes on. And so you may spend a bunch of effort trying to figure out what those judges want and then tailoring your strategy to those judges, or you may just ignore them completely and press your luck and hope for the best and just not spend any time worrying about those 3 judges. You also have objectives established by your band director. And at the beginning of the game, each person's going to get 2 of these cards and they're going to get to choose one. So it's sort of like the long range objectives in Wingspan. And so and these are worth different amounts of points because some of them are easier and some of them are harder. But there are 3 objectives set by your band director for each player. So in this case, if my woodwind and percussion sections have the exact same number of band members at the end of the game, so you total up the pips on the dice, and they're equal, I'll get some extra bonus points. So in the game, the way you score points is by having the biggest band, the best musical performance, which is tracked here. During the game, you can collect these chits that show different music notes and add them to your sheet of music for whichever song you decided to play for the parade. And the person who practices the most, the person who covers up the most of these music notes, will have the best musical performance. There may also be objectives that your director sets in terms of your musical performance. Each band also has their own signature style, and you can get these signature style cubes to increase the amount of style that your band has. Each of these cubes is worth a point at the end of the game. And again, there may be judges' objectives or there may be directors' objectives related to your style as well. And then the 4th way, so there's 1, 2, 3 areas that you can score points. And then the 4th way is based on the parade lineup itself. Sometimes there are certain units that you want to be next to, and then other times there are units that you don't want to be next to. So this is the setup for a 3-player game. At the beginning of each turn, there are 20 turns in the game, and you'll notice that the number of units and the number of action cards is synced, so that once all these parade units are revealed, you're basically going to be out of actions, and the end game will be triggered, and that represents the start of the parade. So at the beginning of each turn, what you do is the player who has the whistle, which is the first player token, in the game, the real game, it would probably just be a cardboard token or a little wooden piece. For this prototype, I just went ahead and threw a whistle in there, just like I threw in a police car to lead the parade just for fun. But at the beginning of each turn, you just randomly, whoever's turn it is, decides to flip over a unit. And in this case, it happens to be a band. It could have been something else. Then the other thing that they do is they draw 1 die from the band bag and add it to the band room. And now simultaneously, all the players are going to take the top 2 cards from their action deck and they're going to look at them. And I have the choice of which one of these 2 cards I want to play. I'm going to take 1 card and I'm going to play an action this round, and then the other one I'm going to save for later. So right now I have 4 choices. This allows me to peek at one of those judges' objectives, that would be a good thing to do early in the game, because then it gives me a sense of direction of how to score some extra points. Or I can have my band practice and add 2 music notes to my music sheet. I could also recruit new members to my band and draft 2 dice from the band room. Or I could jockey the parade lineup and shift a couple of units around in the parade lineup. Now, early in the game, this might not be as valuable an action because there hasn't been a whole lot revealed yet, and I haven't claimed a band. At some point in the parade, I'm gonna claim one of these bands as mine, but I haven't done that yet, so I don't really necessarily need to be moving things around right now. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose to play this particular card, and then I have the choice. I could put this card, the one that I'm not using, back on top of my pile, which means it'll come right back up, or I can put it at the bottom and save it for later in the game. In this case, I'm probably gonna save it for later, so that way I'll have the option to move some units around once I see what the parade lineup is gonna look like. So all 3 players would decide at the same time which one of their cards they're gonna play, and then we reveal them all at the same time, and we each take the action that we choose. So in this case, maybe I go ahead and I'm gonna just add 2 music notes. Maybe I decide I'm not gonna worry about the judges yet. I'll just add 2 music notes to my board, and then I discard this. And each player is gonna take their turn. Then we're gonna pass the whistle to the next player. They're gonna reveal another unit in the parade, anyone they want. That one happens to be a fire truck. And you'll notice that if you're ahead or behind the fire truck, you're gonna actually lose a point for the parade lineup. And that's because if you've ever been in a parade and been right next to the fire trucks, they're really loud and they tend to drown out your band. So you're just gonna flip one of those over. You're gonna take 1 more die and add it to the band room. So there's more and more band members that you can recruit. And then everybody's gonna do the same thing. They're gonna look at their next 2 cards. They're gonna decide which one they wanna play this time, and whether or not they wanna put one on the one that they're not using, put it on the bottom or on the top of their pile. And that's gonna continue until at some point, all of these units will be revealed. Everybody will have claimed the band in the parade. There'll probably be a bunch of jockeying for position, later in the game as people are trying to meet their objectives and things. But once all these units are revealed, then everybody will get 1 last turn. So you'll have 1 card left. You'll play that action, and then that signifies that the parade's getting ready to start, and we move on to scoring. We'll score whoever has the biggest band, the best musical performance. We will score the style points, your director's objectives, and then the judges stand and the judges points. And whoever has the most stars is the band that's the best in show, and they win the best in show trophy, and they're the winner of the game. So that's where I currently stand with the prototype for the band leader game. My goal is to continue to play test this and to continue to upgrade the prototype and make it a little bit better, and to take it to PAX Unplugged, which is a board game convention in December that I'll be going to in Philadelphia. And Levi and I are going to be working a booth during the mornings for a game publisher selling their games. But what I'd like to do is in the evenings, they have what's called an unpub room, which is basically a play testing room for unpublished games. And they have an open testing period from like 8 p.m. to midnight each night. So what I'd really like to do is take band leader there and see if I can get some other people to play test it and give me some feedback. I'd also like to try to get some blind play testing in, which is where You just give the game to somebody with the rule book and allow them to try it without you explaining the game. And it's really a way to test your rule book and see, how well you've done in explaining how to play the game. So over the next few months, that's where I'm at with Band Leader. And I'm excited to keep moving the ball forward on it and see where it goes. If you're interested in play testing it, let me know, and we'll see if we can get it to the table for you. See ya.